Hello, my name is Drew Rothengas, and today we will be discussing the difference between relational and transactional exchanges, and why one of these approaches is more relevant to supply chain management than the other. First, I think it is paramount to understand that supply chain management by its very nature depends on relationships and connections in order to function both effectively and efficiently. So let's take a look at the key differences between transactional and relational exchanges, keeping that understanding in the back of our minds. Transactional exchanges are short-term oriented and centered around self-interest. In this basic economic exchange, you give me something, I give you money, and we both go on our way. There is no past or future to our buyer-seller relationship, and it exists purely for the time it takes to perform a single transaction. This is very different from a relational exchange, but nonetheless appropriate in a lot of instances. Relational exchanges, on the other hand, are long-term oriented and centered around mutual interest. There is likely to be a future. If all exchanges were between buyers and sellers meeting only once, there would be no incentive to provide anything but a transactional exchange. It's only worth the extra effort to construct an experience for the buyer if that work will be rewarded by a continuing relationship in the future. Going over our differences, I think it is safe to say that relational exchanges align better with the overarching goals of supply chain management. Relational exchanges facilitate integration, which is a key driver of success in the globalized world of today. According to Dave Nelson, a guru in supply chain management who has worked for John Deere, Honda, and Delphi, if you develop the right relationship with your supply base, you can have 10,000 additional brains thinking about ways to improve your product and facilitate cost savings. And that is powerful. Creating these collaborative and committed relationships, along with building a trust that assures unanticipated contingencies will be resolved in a mutually profitable manner rather than opportunistically, is extremely beneficial to the supply chain, but is easier said than done. According to Rob Hansfield, the director of supply chain research at Ohio State University, managing relationships among the various personalities in the supply chain organizations is often the most difficult part of the supply chain initiative, but also the single most important ingredient for successful supply chain management. Without positive interpersonal relationships, he says, the other systems cannot function properly. One supply chain manager expressed this feeling succinctly. Supply chain management is one of the most emotional experiences I've ever witnessed. Once you get everyone together into the same room, you begin to realize the number of false perceptions that exist. It becomes especially tricky when you show people how sub-optimizing their functional area can optimize the entire supply chain. In discussing the importance of relationships in supply chain management, trust building is emphasized as an ongoing process that must be continually managed. In short, trust takes time to develop but can disappear very quickly, if abused. Let's take a look at some of the shifts in thinking that must occur. Companies must shift their thinking from what's in it for me or our company to what's in it for us, meaning how can the entire supply chain from manufacturer to distributor to consumer benefit from our lasting relationship. They must shift their thinking from the old adage that information is power to thinking that effectively utilizing information within their chains is far more valuable, especially in terms of increasing competitive advantage and positively impacting the bottom line. At the beginning of this presentation, I asked you to keep the nature of the supply chain in the back of your mind. To remember that a good supply chain optimizes the performance of the whole rather than the individual, which is why relational exchanges are more relevant to the success of a supply chain. Not only do they foster trust and commitment, but integration as well, enhancing the overall business performance of all parties involved. And try to remember, relationships are power.